Well, folks, this is Captain Boat Builder coming to you from my basement boatyard. Once again, another episode. This one is episode number 9. We're calling this one Installing the Deck. And I hope that you'll be patient with me. This episode is a little bit longer. It may seem a little tedious, but as I have said in the beginning of this series, and also with my other boats, my only goal is to make the process of building these boats a little easier for you and a little more enjoyable. I made a mistake in the construction, and it took me quite a while to straighten it out. And if I had known that there is just one simple measurement that would have prevented this problem, it would have saved me days and days of work. And I want to emphasize that this is not a problem with the kit or the instruction manual or anything. This is a mistake that I made. So if you'll bear with me and watch this, I'm sure the process for you will be much easier. So again, episode number 9, Installing the Deck. Well, I hope all of you will bear with me because it seems like I'm spending a tremendous amount of time talking about something that's relatively simple. And it is simple if you do it right. I just didn't get it quite right. So you can see in this crude drawing of mine, you can see that the forward seat walls, left and right, and the cleat that's at the top, because the deck is 342 millimeters wide, you want to be sure that this outboard edge and this outboard edge are exactly 342 millimeters across, or slightly less. If you're going to make a mistake, make it slightly less. Because remember, the deck is going to sit right on top. Go across here, sit right there. So that's what you're looking for. And as I said before, the kit is beautifully made. But if you're a millimeter off here or a millimeter off there, this is going to be wrong. So again, it has to be 342 millimeters from this edge to this edge, or slightly less. And the reason for that is that this is what you want it to look like when you put the deck on. You want the edge of the deck right here to line up exactly with the edge of this panel. And the reason for that is that when you start to do the round over here, you don't want to cut into this piece at all, either with your router or with sandpaper, because you don't want this edge grain to be exposed, because you won't get a nice clean edge that only shows this edge grain. So what happens if you do it as I did incorrectly, where the seat walls are actually a little bit too wide, what happens is as you start the round over, you're going to go into the laminates on the forward seat wall, and these little laminate stripes are going to be exposed. So that's why you want to be sure that the edge of the deck lines up with the edge of the forward seat wall, or it can actually stick out just a little bit because you're going to round it over. You just don't want to cut into this vertical part. So again, in keeping with my idea of these videos of trying to potentially help you through some little problems that you might have, mostly by revealing the problems that I had, I'm going to show you a problem that I've had with installing the forward seat walls, which you can see starts on page 146 of the directions. Installing these seat walls, getting everything in the correct position, and then thinking about putting the deck down to get the forward deck in the correct position. And if I understand the directions carefully, what they say is to start here, where these seat walls are literally just hanging on the little positioning blocks, and then in the back, right here, you're taping them very tightly against the center bulkhead, and also clearing the bottom, sanding this so the contact is light and that this panel is easy to move around, so that you don't have any trouble following the alignment marks that are on the forward bulkhead here for this contact, and also the aft contact. There are alignment marks back here that you can use, and in theory, if you do that, the positioning is perfect. Well, I found a couple of problems, because what's really important in this, what's really important is that the distance from the top of this seat wall on the outside to the top of this seat wall on the outside is 342 millimeters. And it needs to be very precise, and I'll show you here in just a minute why it needs to be precise. I did try as carefully as I could to follow this alignment mark here, and again, this one back here, which should give you the perfect positioning. I find no fault with the kit. I think the kit is perfect. The instructions are perfect. The precision of the cut on the kit and the location of the alignment marks should give you the perfect fit. But I'll show you in just a second here why it's important to check carefully, in my opinion, before you do the final gluing. So here's my forward deck in position. It has not been glued, and I want to show you exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about the importance of setting this rail that's under here and this one, the outside edges, exactly 342 millimeters apart or less. And I'll show you the problem I have. So if you look carefully, you can see right here we have a good relationship between the deck and this forward seat wall. And when I say an important relationship, I want to show you as carefully as I can, because again, I'm trying to get an aesthetically pleasing result. This edge, which is the deck, needs to be flush with this edge, which is the seat wall. And that's because when you sand this, whether you sand it and produce a round over, or whether you use the round over router bit to produce a round over, it's important that all this grain, that this end grain in the deck and what is end grain in the seat walls, you want these to be just like this so you get a good result. The problem that I have, and I'll show you this, because my edges are just a little bit too far apart, is I have this situation where they don't quite line up, especially here in the middle. I can sort of push them into position, but it doesn't work that well. And so what you're going to have is you're going to have a problem with this end grain here matching the end grain here, and you're not going to get a consistent grain pattern, which is very important to me. So the way that I've solved this problem myself, I'll show you later, is through the use of a lot of clamps and nails and, forcing the wood a little bit. I've solved the problem. But back to the beginning, if I had been sure that this surface here and the one on the other side were only 342 millimeters from here to there, then they would have been covered up by the deck and I wouldn't have had this problem. So again, I just wanted to make it clear to you that the problem that I have is not because of the cut or the quality of the kit. It has to do with the alignment of these panels. And what I found, of course, is that this, the spear deck, I call it the spear deck, from this edge to this edge over here, for the full length, it's exactly 342 millimeters from side to side. I have measured it carefully in different places, and it's cut perfectly square, and both sides are perfectly parallel. So the problem with the overlap is not this piece. The problem is these. And again, this face and the face on the other side need to be exactly 342 millimeters apart right at the top or less. In the case of this boat that I built, they're slightly more, and that's why I had that problem on that side that I showed you. And again, I will show you how I fixed it. But the problem is of my making and not of the design or the kit or anything. It's just me, and I hope it doesn't happen to you. So I promise you, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. I'm just trying to save you some time. And this took me a lot of time to straighten out this problem that I effectively created for myself. So I hope that you won't have this problem. You can see here the array of clamps and weights that I've used during the gluing to be sure that the deck was in the correct position. I'll start in the back. This clamp here that's hooked into the scupper, just make sure that we have plenty of downforce right here so that there's good contact. We've got that on both sides. These long clamps go from side to side, and what they're doing, you see, it's underneath the edge of the deck. It's actually pushing on the side piece here. What that's doing is it's pushing these pieces in to make up for the fact that I didn't quite set the rails exactly the way they're supposed to be. But you can see here what I've accomplished now is I've got good alignment between this edge and this panel, so that when I sand this, I'm going to get a nice smooth surface. I also use some weights to push down on the planking. And the gluing is finished. I got the fillet done in the front and get ready to take everything off. So it worked. It worked well, except I shouldn't have had to do all this, and I hope that you'll be able to avoid this. Here's another small change that I made to the original design, the original plan. In the original plan and the kit, the deck extends this far back into the cockpit area. And the reason for that is that this area where you now see the swivel jam cleat, this is what they refer to as the seat. So this is where you would sit facing backwards if you were going to row the boat. And because I'm going to use this only as a sailboat, I decided that the seat for rowing for me was unnecessary, and it also made the cockpit area, the seating area, smaller. So I cut this off. And also because I happen to like jam cleats, and I don't think I want to hold the sheet all the time while I'm sailing, I figured that this swivel jam here from Ronstan, this is where I'm going to mount it. And you notice it's mounted so that the jam is actually in line with the back of the deck, and that's so I won't be banging myself on that jam very much, even though most of the time it'll be swiveled to one side or the other. And this really increases the area in the boat for sitting. You may also wonder, well, if you want to increase the area, why didn't you just cut this off square, which would have given you this much more area? And I did consider that, but the reason that I installed it and cut it like this is that if you cut it off square right here, you have an extremely sharp corner. That's a good place to hit your knee or your back or who knows what. So I left this rounded so that I would protect myself from hitting this corner, the top corner of the main bulkhead. So this is the setup I have for the extension, a slight extension of the deck plate, and this is where the swivel jam cleat is going to go. So again, since you're going to be rounding over the deck only, you don't want to cut into the seat wall. This is what you're trying to achieve. Only grain showing on the deck, no grain showing up from here. So finally, after all this discussion, probably boring you to death, I want you to see that I have achieved what I was trying to do. I was trying to get these edges set so that the grain lines in the piece of plywood that forms the deck would be uniform. I wanted all the grain lines to look the same. This is just one side. I think I've pretty much achieved what I was trying to achieve. We got nice uniformity in the grain lines, good color. This is just one coat of resin. There are going to be quite a few more. And one thing that I did want to mention here, and I'll talk about it more later, is these edges, which are in the instruction manual, these edges are all fiberglassed and reinforced. I've decided not to do that. They're just going to be coated with maybe 3 or 4 coats of resin before I start the varnishing. And I'll explain to you why I'm doing that. But anyhow, this is the edge that I wanted, and you've had to deal with me during the entire process of trying to get this edge, but this is what I wanted it to look like, and I'm very pleased with it. In closing today's episode, I just wanted to show you where we are in the construction process. The construction is pretty much complete. What's left is most of the varnishing and the painting. So here's some nice shots. The boat's up on its side, of course, and you can see it's just about all finished. And also, to give you an idea of what's left in terms of construction, you may remember from the early episode, all the parts were displayed. And I wanted to show you what parts are left. The only thing that's left is the assembly of the rudder. These are the pieces for the head of the rudder. Tiller and hiking stick, I may change that. This is the skeg for the bottom of the boat and the skid piece to go on the skeg. These are pieces of fiberglass that will be used to line the edges of the daggerboard trunk, top and bottom, for wear. Here we have the rudder and the daggerboard. I'm continuing to work on the finish, building up the resin coating and block sanding. But you can see from the beginning, if you go back, when I was unboxing the kit, this is all that's left. I certainly have enjoyed it, and I'll look forward to the next episode. Thanks for watching. So long.